Now, before I actually start the intro, is your actual thing recording?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another riveting, great, fantastic episode of...
Oh, do I say it? You're just stupid 2.0.
I was going to say anyone can say it because... And we say 2.0 because we were having a great episode recording. It was going along great. Ray's
20 minutes into it.
20 plus minutes into it. Chemistry was going good, everything. And then bam, as usual, the podcast gods struck us down, as always. But anyways, guys,
I just forgot. I just had a little issue. Yeah. And I didn't have any of the audio freaking recorded.
It's all good.
But that's okay.
That's okay because
we love talking.
We love talking. If you know Ray, you know I, and all three listeners, you know us very well. You know.
Renee knows the topic today, so
I now know the topic
he's
today.
going to pretend that he doesn't. So you guys are going to tell us how good of an actor he is.
All right. We're going to pretend. But anyways, so y'all know who we are. I almost did it again. I almost called myself Ray again. So the first time I recorded this episode, I fucked up the intro amazingly. I called myself Ray. Anyways, I am Rene, aka Stool Former. And I'll tell y'all what that means at the end of the episode, so stay tuned. And this is Ray.
You have to remember to do that.
A.K.A. Twinkie Man. Which is
nice job, Renee. That's his only job, the whole podcast.
The whole podcast is to sit there, shut the fuck up, and listen, and I can't even do that.
Listen to my bullshit. Renee, have you ever been in a morgue?
No, actually, I have been, Ray, but what would you like me to describe? My experiences in the morgue?
I wonder how you knew that I was going to ask that. It's like you recorded this before.
Fascinating. This is a very meta episode now. Anyways, I would be happy to describe what my experiences are like in the morgue.
When you went to this morgue, could you see the dead bodies? Were they like lying out in places? What they look like?
So let me paint for those of you who've never been to a morgue, let me paint a picture for you. Let me stroke it in front of y'all. So you go in, and depending on how big the morgue is, a lot of times it's either like a hospital or a place like where people are found, like, the county coroner's office, where people have, dead people are found dead in the outside world. So it's very cold there. Even the building is cold. And then, of course, when you get to the freezer where the dead bodies are, it's even colder. And to me, the whole thing smells of like frozen dead body, if that makes sense. Like, remember back when you dissect...
People don't know what frozen dead body smells like, Renee.
Fair enough.
That does not make sense.
I guess...
I feel like most people don't.
Okay, maybe apparently only I know what that smells like. Thanks to my neighbor, Steve.
I mean, I do.
Thanks to my neighbor, Steve.
Oh, yeah, we brought him up.
So, you remember science class where we had to dissect like a frog or a worm or something like that?
Yeah, fetal pig, all that stuff.
Fetal pig. Luckily I never had to do that one. To me, it smells like formaldehyde and a little bit of like rot. Like if it was kept on ice, so it's like not quite as stale, but not like fresh, but not necessarily in like fresh and like, oh, this thing just died, but like it's not as pungent or repulsive. And just like walking in, you can see sometimes, depending on how big your morgue is, like where they maybe do autopsies and stuff, and just overall a very eerie, weird mood, I could say.
So the bodies weren't displayed there in body bags.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, nowadays we don't have, to pay respects and privacy purposes. I mean, and if they're going to need like an identification, they would call you in and like, only have it on display for that one person. There wouldn't be public showings of these bodies, or like, oh, hey, look, there's Steve over there, and he's dead. Lols. So
what's the purpose of a morgue?
So the purpose of a morgue, I would say, if I was looking for Renee's standard dictionary textbook definition of a morgue, would be, a place that temporarily houses dead bodies until their final disposition can be arranged. So like,
right, they can be put in the ground,
right, they can be cremated or put in the dumpster,
thrown in the trash.
Nice. Or turn into head cheese that my neighbor Steve will give to me.
How would your head cheese be served? Like over like a nice toast?
I would say, yeah, Steve does that. Sometimes he'll just have it like on a platter, sometimes on a nice toast. So to kind of give you context, so I have this neighbor, Steve, and he's like, hey, Renee, you want to go, I found something cool. You want to check it out? And I'm like, Steve, no, I swear to God, it's another dead body. I'm going to hate this. He's like, no, man, this is cool. I promise something different.
So dumb.
So shut up, Ray. So I go to his house, and of course, what is it? It's another dead body. I'm like, Steve, that's like the third time this week, and it's only Wednesday. What the hell? He's like, well, would you like a sandwich?
Get your penis out of it.
Yeah, take your penis out of it, Renee. I'm like, oh, sorry, Steve. I'll respect the dead
a little bit more. Can I put that
more.
in the podcast?
Yes, respect the dead a little bit more, Renee.
Guys, it's not real. We can say necrophilia stuff if we want to. It's just made up. It's okay. Actually, you're completely wrong about what a morgue is used for.
What?
I mean, actually, you're not really, because that's what it is today.
But the original... I was saying, how am I wrong?
The original purpose of a morgue was to house bodies for identification purposes. That was the original reason that they came about. And the word morgue, people commonly believe that the word comes from the Latin moral, which is really hard to say, M-O-R-L, and that means death.
You nailed it, though. I think you did a great job of pronouncing that. It's almost like you had several attempts to pronounce it previously.
Yeah. Well, I used to date a guy named Carl. It's kind of similar.
Do we shout out to Carl or no?
He's all right. I don't mind him.
Kind of shout out to Carl.
No beef. We don't have to shout him out. We can just not talk about him
or
anymore.
Fuck Carl.
But actually, the word morgue is a French word, and it comes from the French word morger, M-O-R-G-E-R, which means to look over one innocently or to look solemnly. Okay. So it's like to actually visualize a dead body.
Literally
or to visualize something.
Right. So literally the name in French involves looking at dead bodies.
Right. So then it kind of became associated with identifying them. And in 1718, there was a dictionary, Dictionnaire de l'Académie.
That's French for the English Oxford Dictionary.
Did I sound like Pepe LePew?
You sound like you were going to sexually harass multiple French, like female skunks, yes.
In this dictionary, the morgue is known as a place where dead bodies that have been found are open to the public for viewing in order that they be recognized. So
literally,
voila.
It built into the name is the true purpose of the morgue. I'm a moron. I don't know what they're for. They're there to check out dead bodies.
In all fairness, it's changed over the years. People aren't really like walking through the morgue, checking it out.
Oh,
right?
I was giving you excuses to say, no, Renee, you're a moron. You don't know what you're talking about.
Newsflash, in the morgue we're talking about today, the Paris Morgue, that's what people do. They just walk all over it. It's a nice little tourist attraction in Paris. Yes, the Paris Morgue.
So while you're checking out like Notre Dame and the Louvre and stuff, then you just stop by the morgue and just check out, make your Paris trip a little more metal. Check it. Let's go see a dead body, bro.
Yeah, dead bodies on display for crowds to see. And historians believe that places like morgues started in the 14th century in prisons, and they were used to like identify inmates and then later dead bodies.
I guess that makes sense too, because it's not like nowadays where you have like, not even just like social media, but like the internet where you could put up photos or be like, hey, like you could just wildly say, hey, we found this guy mysteriously in this area. If you may think your loved one look like him, or like even, state issued ID, government issued ID, so people weren't walking around with these. So
if Aunt Sally went missing, you could be like, oh God.
She's probably at Steve's house. How would a lot of these people so I'm curious, how would a lot of people in the Paris morgue, what would they die of? Like, was it like disease, or what was a common death they would have?
Well, so a lot of them recorded were drownings. People brought in for drownings, which kind of makes sense because the morgue was actually located right next to La Seine. It's the main river that goes through Paris. So it makes sense that there's a lot of drownings because then you'd fish people out, dead bodies out of the river. But think of how many people drowned back then just because, especially women, right? Because women did the laundry, as they should.
Yes, they should. I'm glad Ray and I are on the same page about this.
Because women would do the laundry and you didn't have washers and dryers back when it was a thing, and they would do the laundry by and they would go over to La Seine, which was a big river, and they would wash their clothes in there. And also they would wear these big dresses with like petticoats and shit with this heavy materials, and if they go to the water and they tripped or they got caught
or like
in
a current, yeah,
they would very easily drown, because it's not like mom and dad are bringing you to swim lessons.
Yeah, no, exactly. You either kind of learn how to swim as a kid, then or you never learn. I just imagine, like, instead of like your very logical, rational explanation, like it's just like everyone in Paris is just a fucking idiot, and so there's like a rail with a sign like "Do not lean over this rail, you will drown," and people are like, "You can't tell me what to do," and they just keep like literally hundreds or thousands of people just every fucking day just lean over this rail and drowning because they're too stupid to listen to it. Big government can't tell me what to do.
Speaking of drowning and finding bodies in La Seine, there was a Mental Floss article I found that talked about that they once had a net, like, drawn
to catch people from people from falling over the
rail. No, in the river to catch already dead bodies easier. like, they just catch them in the current.
I mean, that makes sense, especially if unfortunately people getting pulled under is common, and a drowned corpse can be really heavy and gross to handle, and that makes sense. But I like my idea better, was just to catch people because they want to lean over that damn rail.
And
fucking idiots, we put up a sign and everything.
But the first Paris Morgue was actually built in 1804, and it was on Ile de la Cite, which is a place in France.
Okay.
It was supposedly more hygienic than the morgues have previously.
We have less bubonic plague than previously.
That started to become kind of a tourist attraction, and then it was rebuilt in 1864. And
why did they rebuild it? Did they say? Did you find any?
Maybe it burnt down, or maybe it sucked. I don't remember. But that's
usually... We'll say it sucks so bad that people burn it down.
Okay, that's probably it. Yep, revisionist history.
Hashtag revisionist history.
And then in 1860, so this one, the new one, was built right next to Notre Dame, which I don't know if you've ever been to Notre Dame or you're familiar with it.
Never been to Europe, Ray.
Oh, well, that sucks. Anyway.
Renee's life sucks.
We'll send a GoFundMe for Renee.
This is the fly him to France. To lean over the rail and drown in the river.
I was there 11 days before it burned down.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was extremely lucky that I was able to see it and go up there, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So hopefully I don't know exactly the updates on how they're doing with that, because I know they've gotten a lot of money to restore it, which is fantastic.
I would hope so. It's literally one of the most historic monuments in Europe.
And it's located like right splat in the middle of France. I mean, in Paris, like where all the touristy stuff is. So the fact that the new morgue was right next to it really helped bring in the tourists. Now it's no longer there, sorry. But now there's like a World War II memorial or like a Holocaust survival memorial. And this new morgue was kind of more scientific. It was known to have a lot of forensic studying going on there and forensic research. So the new one had like a lab. It had like specific rooms for autopsies. It had different staff offices. It also had a laundry room because they used to bring in the dead people and the clothes that were never washed, but now they're able to wash them and hang them next to the dead bodies.
I guess that would definitely be more hygienic, I would imagine.
Yeah, more hygienic, and also like DNA didn't exist back then, so it's not like oh,
no, DNA didn't exist at all. The only way we transmitted our genes was God.
And then this morgue had a back door that was used to like discreetly bring in the dead bodies instead of like wheeling them through the front door for everyone to see, which I'm sure was more dramatic, but not as respectful. In the first year that the new morgue was open, the morgue had brought in 318 deceased men and then 58 deceased women. And then in 1881, quite a few years later, they stopped having bodies be viewed in the nude, which I saw a lot of sources that said that they were nude when they were laid out for identification.
Interesting.
But I saw some that said like they had cloths over their dinglings.
Ray, no one listens to this podcast, so you can use the word penis. They're giant throbbing cocks. They put a cloth over their giant throbbing cocks.
So they wouldn't display these bodies past 1881 that were found in the nude. They would only display them to people that specifically requested them, like perverts or like family members or police officers that like wanted to identify them.
I want Anne Gertrude to be nude. I want people to see her like the day she was born. She loved her birthday suit.
A big thing that happened in 1882, the next year, was the morgue got a refrigeration system.
Oh, okay. Wait, so that makes me kind of curious. Obviously in 1882, well, man, yes, we talked about this the first time we recorded, but for our listeners, you said in 1882 they had refrigeration, but this place has been open since 1864. Yep. How do they keep the bodies cool?
So they didn't really keep the bodies cool. Obviously, France has different seasons, so it was easier to keep them cooler in the winter than in the summer. Makes sense. What they would do is they would have, so the bodies were laid out to the public for viewing on these like black marble slabs. And they would have like a little spigot or faucet over the bodies that would slowly drip water, like do a little Chinese water torture over them.
Okay, but not torturous when you're dead.
I'll ask a philosopher that, and then we'll get back to that.
Ray, call up your philosopher friend now.
I don't think I have any, and that's purposeful.
Fuck philosophy majors.
You try to get it to do anything, and they're like, why?
It's like, no, but seriously, the garbage is piling up. Why? Stop having an existentialist crisis, you moron. Throw out the garbage that's been sitting there for 3 weeks.
The problem with this water dripping on them was that the water would, like, distort the dead body's face, so like the body then like made it more hydrated, so made the skin and bloat and more puffy, and it would give like a really like shiny, waxy appearance. So
yeah, the osmolarity of water is not going to be the same as even a decomposed human cell, so it's going to swell and bloat up. Yeah.
So it was lucky for them to get refrigeration for sure, but before that they only would keep the bodies displayed for 3 days.
You know, actually, another kind of follow-up question I had, especially related not only to this water bloating up the corpses, but also you said a lot of these deaths were drownings. Did they actually have a good success rate in identifying these bodies?
I don't think that was actually recorded from anything I found, and I read a lot of like really old articles from the time, and I don't think they had I don't think their success rate was fantastic.
Then again, I'm kind of curious. I know you probably didn't look this up. I'm curious what modern success rates are. I wonder how many John Does remain and Jane Does remain John and Jane Does.
It's crazy how little information there is on the Paris Morgue. Like, I had to go into like archives to find stuff. There's not a lot of recent articles about them, and all of the recent articles you can find say pretty much the same exact thing. So it took a lot of digging.
They went to the same primary sources as you. Got you.
There's not a whole lot of information, so I did not find that in my research. I apologize. They would have they would do interrogations there where they would like bring suspects. The police would like bring suspects and then dramatically open the curtain and try to elicit some sort of response from them. Yeah, sometimes it actually worked. That's what my resources stated. After the 3 days that the body would be displayed to the public, before refrigeration, they couldn't display it anymore. Well, they could, but it would be fucking disgusting.
Gross, yeah.
They would make either plaster casts of the dead body and then display them, or they would take pictures of the body, but that depends on like the time period, right?
Were they embalming any of these dead bodies also?
I didn't find anything about actual embalming there, because I don't think usually in morgues they embalm, right? That's a whole different.
Yeah, that's more like the funeral home.
Yeah, that's like a whole different ball game. And then also like I don't know if even embalming was a thing back then. That'd be an interesting.
Ancient Egyptians embalmed.
I know, but some places now, like some places different times don't embalm. They do different stuff.
If you'd like to learn more about ancient Egyptian embalming, go check out our Mummy Mania episode.
But wait to finish this one first, because the morgue ended up closing in 1907. So this was due to like public complaints, and I guess it gigantically failed in an inspection.
Holy shit, half these people you displaying aren't even dead.
And I guess like at this time Parisians kind of saw it as an eyesore, and they didn't think it was that like acceptable to have around, especially because it was in such a highly touristy area.
Yeah, I could see that.
Right, we don't want to have this associated with like the center of our tourism, because it was a huge tourism attraction, and it also like showed up in a lot of Paris tour books at this time, like tour guides. It would be like, oh, the Paris Morgue.
It's weird how you have this cognitive dissonance. On one hand, you have Parisianers who are like, oh yeah, the morgue's disgusting, we need to close it. And then you have other people who are putting in pamphlets like, yeah, come check out our morgue.
Oh yeah, they would have street vendors there.
It's just kind of, I just find that interesting that you always have, like with some of these potentially controversial, obviously this serves a purpose and a function, potentially controversial, you always have someone who's going to take the other side and be like, no, this is good, or no, this is shit.
Which, I mean, I could see how some good came of it, but also
absolutely.
At the same time, they didn't have like TV like we have now.
Yeah.
So that was their morbid fascination entertainment. Like I watch true crime stuff where there's a lot of illicit or explicit things on there. Does that? I don't know. I might go to a Paris Morgue if there was one around me. I don't know. I can't say I wouldn't. There was an old New York Times article from like the 1890s that referred to the Paris Morgue as a sinister museum of suicide and assassination. The people loved coming and looking at the dead bodies. Like at its peak, there was 40,000 visitors a day.
A day?
The morgue. A day.
Holy shit.
And at that same time, and this is like according to a New York
there's
Times
actually
article
a lot of
from
people
that
visiting
time.
This. Wow.
Yeah, so at that same time where there was like around 40,000 visitors a day, Notre Dame had only 30,000. So Notre Dame had less. Isn't that crazy?
Like, wow, this was actually a popular thing. So the people who
loved it.
The people who were going against it were really being fuddy-duddies because this was actually like drawing people in. Wow.
It had tons of regulars, and then also
I was going to say, there's probably like one guy who just goes like 3-4 times a day. It's like, damn it, Steve.
Steve is just popping up everywhere in this episode.
Steve is popping up like all those big throbbing corpse cocks.
There was Parisian tabloids that would talk about the popular dead bodies or the crazy stories of the dead bodies that would come in and try to speculate how they died or who killed them or try to make it almost like a
whodunit, yeah, sensationalism. Like you used a perfect word for this, tabloid. But yeah, I guess also makes sense. There's less to do, and especially if there was a really high profile John or Jane Doe, I could see. Because
we do the same thing. Like think of like how sensationalized like Gabby Petito case just was last year, because that was all around, and then that new motherfucker that killed
his wife and his son,
his wife, his kid, the lawyer, and then there was a Massachusetts nurse who, did you see that?
No.
Oh my god, she killed she strangled all 3 of her kids.
Oh god.
Yeah, she was a Massachusetts nurse. She had they think it was like postpartum psychosis, which is horrible for so many ways. I'm not going to make a judgment on that, but obviously it's horrible. Well, that's my judgment. Charles Dickens was a frequent flyer of the Paris Morgue. So was Sigmund Freud.
I could see Freud. Interesting, Charles Dickens.
Because of all those.
Yeah. Well, plus also Freud lived in Vienna versus, so it's not as hard to go from.
And he loved the throbbing cocks.
He loved big throbbing cocks.
Charles Dickens is quoted as saying, "Whenever I'm in Paris, I am dragged by invisible force into the morgue. I never want to go there, but I'm always pulled there."
Well, it's kind of like even now, like, for example, like when you go to a museum, like let's say you go to a museum of history, and they have, let's say, like an Egyptian mummy on display, like you're going to kind of want to check it out, because even though, yes, they look gross and sometimes even frightening, at the same time, you have this thing that's been, how often do you see a dead body, let alone, potentially someone you knew or someone famous, or, in death, we're all equal. And so maybe you never got to see Lord blah, blah, blah in life, but in death, he's laying there in the nude with his giant throbbing cock out for the whole world to see.
It was a place for all classes went to this. Like poor people went, anyone could get in. You didn't have to pay to get in. It was free.
Oh, okay. And so, yeah, exactly.
Very progressive.
So, like, the homeless guy could wander in there and look at the bodies, and he could be standing next to, like, the Lord. Out of curiosity, do you happen to know, I know you said there's a limited information, were a lot of the bodies, were they, like, also a mixture of all classes, too? Or were they, like, mostly...
That I don't know either, because think of it this way. Sometimes people might be hard to tell, especially in the years when they were displayed naked. A lot of the big identifiers were their clothes. So, I mean, that's probably how you could tell. I don't know.
Clothes,
they didn't really say too much.
Clothes and facial features. And if your face is being distorted, especially if you fell into the river or something, you may not that's...
Or you got shot in the face.
Oh, you got shot in the face. Oh, that was Lady What's-Her-Face.
There were a couple of... there were several notable cases that were at the Paris Morgue.
Let's talk about them.
So one of them was Enfant de la Rue des Verbères. That's how I am pronouncing it. I'm not changing it. I don't care if it's wrong. This was in 1886. It was a 4-year-old girl that was found dead.
Okay.
And this was advertised on a shit ton of Parisian newspapers on the cover. The actual picture of the dead girl.
Oh, wow.
Which is really nice. they had her posed like propped up on a chair in a little dress, which is a little bit creepy.
I was gonna say that's interesting. Well, I mean, you said by then they were already wearing clothes again, so
yeah, a fuck ton of people.
But actually, to lack of a better word, stage her so people could like view her. It's interesting.
Just creepy. Like you don't want to. That makes her more lifelike. I think sitting up, it's just a little bit meh. And then in 1895, there was an 18-month-old pulled out of La Seine. And then around the same time, there's a 3-year-old that was also found near the infant. And the newspapers, the tabloids were kind of like saying, that they were sisters and they were, coming up with all this shit. Mm-hmm. And the police had to come a few times around the bodies because tourists were getting dangerous, like trying to look at them.
What were they trying to? No, I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know what they were trying to do.
I don't even. Yeah.
How did these girls die? Was it like disease, or were they murdered, or?
I didn't have anything that said. And then also, like, it's so long ago. Who knows? Like, they were found in the river. So.
They probably saw the sign for like, fuck that sign. I'm going to do what I want, even though I'm a 4-year-old Parisian girl and I don't know how to swim. Big government can't tell me what to do.
One of the most famous people, I would say the most famous person that was displayed at the morgue was, I actually looked how to pronounce this one, Le Canu de la Seine. She was a woman that she was fished out of the Seine in the 1880s, and she had committed suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And she had, and you can look up a picture of her. She has like a very stoic but kind of happy, like Mona Lisa type face with like a little hinted smile. Mm-hmm. It's the most peaceful face you've ever seen, which is kind of jarring knowing that she's a dead woman. Mm-hmm. But they made, at the morgue, they made a cast of her face immediately because one of the assistants was like really into her, and she became so popular. People had them like as a decoration on their wall, casts of this woman. Wow. Like she became like featured in art and movies, and there was so many different works that were inspired by her. Like what happened that this woman who was so at peace after
not just dying, but choosing to kill herself. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And that like finally brought her peace. Like it's just kind of beautiful and really, really disturbing at the same time. Also, the first CPR dummies had her face.
Really?
There was parts of a body brought into the morgue that were in a large saucepan. The large saucepan was dropped off at the morgue, and it contained a decapitated head, and it had been stewed with herbs and bacon.
Fucking Steve strikes again.
Mm-hmm. That's all I got
for you. Wow. Okay, that's... Ugh. Yeah, that's some crazy Hannibal Lecter shit. Ugh. Oof.
The Paris Morgue. It's no longer there, but it once was for quite a while, and it entertained thousands.
And if you go back
Hundreds of thousands.
And if you go back to the site today, you'll find a bunch of Nazis.
That wasn't our first recording. I don't know what you're talking about.
I just wanted to say something stupid from our first recording. No one would say. Basically, it's the World War II memorial, but the way Ray phrased it earlier, it sounded like there was a bunch of Nazi memorial there in the middle of Paris, France. And all the Nazis are excited by big throbbing cocks. Because if you're a Nazi, you can go fuck yourself.
What, are you tell them what stool former means?
Oh, thank you for remembering that, Ray. Every time Ray and I record, almost immediately afterwards,
we have to go make.
Ray almost every single time is like, Renee, I have to go take a shit. Like, and like legitimately, it's happened. Like,
it's his voice. It just makes me it makes need to take a Bonnie Murphy.
It basically helps Ray go to the bathroom. Apparently, it is my voice. So let us know, guys, on social media.
Renee keeps me regular.
I keep it regular, guys. Let us know if the sound of my voice makes you want to shit yourself. Go to our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at YJS Podcast. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify. Let us know. Hey, does Renee's voice make me want to shit myself?